The emptiness of space stretched beyond the thick glass of the cockpit, an endless sea of darkness speckled with distant stars. Commander Jace Wilder leaned back in the pilot's chair, his calloused fingers dancing across the controls of the Nebula Star, a transport vessel that had seen better days. The ship's gentle hum was a comforting constant, a reminder of the many journeys it had faithfully completed despite its aging systems. Jace was no stranger to difficult missions. His past as a Special Forces commander had prepared him for almost anything, except, perhaps, for his current assignment. The Nebula Star was en route to Cyroth, a desert planet on the fringes of charted space, carrying a single VIP passenger, Princess Sarah Kane of the Teleni Empire. "Approaching Cyroth atmosphere in 30 minutes. Commander," announced the ship's AI, its voice echoing through the cockpit. Jace nodded, his gaze shifting to the barren planet, growing larger in the view screen. "Notify our passenger, please." "Already done, sir." Princess Kane acknowledges but has not yet emerged from her quarters. Of course she hasn't, Jace thought. The princess had remained mostly isolated during their week-long journey, emerging only for meals and brief, tense conversations. The diplomatic tensions between the Human Alliance and the Teleni Empire made their interactions awkward at best, hostile at worst. The political landscape of the galaxy had shifted dramatically in the decades following the Human-Teleni War. A fragile peace now existed, maintained through careful diplomacy and strategic marriages between the two civilizations. Princess Sarah's journey to Cyroth was part of those diplomatic efforts. A cultural exchange, they called it. Jace called it babysitting. The door to the cockpit slid open with a pneumatic hiss, and Sarah Kane entered, her regal posture unmistakable even in the simple travel attire she wore. Her skin had the characteristic pale blue tint of the Teleni, offset by striking silver eyes and hair that seemed to capture and reflect light like polished obsidian. Despite her obvious beauty, it was her expression of perpetual disdain that Jace noticed most. "Commander Wilder," she said, her voice crisp and formal. "I understand we're approaching our destination." Jace rose from his chair, a gesture of respect he maintained despite her frequent coldness. "Yes, Your Highness. We'll be entering Cyroth's atmosphere shortly. I wanted to brief you on the landing procedures and safety protocols." Sarah lifted an eyebrow. "I've traveled extensively. Commander, I'm quite familiar with standard landing procedures." "Cyroth isn't a standard planet," Jace replied, gesturing to the co-pilot's chair. "Please, sit. There are specific hazards you need to be aware of." With obvious reluctance, Sarah took the offered seat. Jace activated the holographic display between them, showing a detailed map of their landing zone. "We'll be setting down here, on the outskirts of the Sulkar Desert," he explained, indicating a small trading outpost near the edge of a vast expanse of sand. "The outpost is protected by atmospheric shields, but our journey to the Teleni embassy will take us through unshielded territory." Sarah's expression remained impassive. "And this concerns me because—" "Because," Jace continued, maintaining his professional tone, "Sulkar is known for Category 4 sandstorms that can appear with minimal warning. Additionally, the desert is home to Sulkar thorn plants, indigenous flora with highly toxic spines." He tapped a command, and the hologram shifted to show a sinister-looking plant with elongated, needle-like protrusions. "Their toxin is particularly dangerous to off-worlders. It can cause severe allergic reactions, and in Teleni physiology specifically, it can trigger—" "Trigger what, Commander?" Sarah's tone had shifted from bored to slightly concerned. Jace cleared his throat. "According to our medical database, it can trigger accelerated reproductive cycles in Teleni females. Something about the toxin mimicking certain hormonal patterns." A flash of genuine alarm crossed Sarah's features before she composed herself. "I see. And what precautions do you suggest?" Jace typed another command, and a new image appeared. A full-body protective suit, with an enclosed helmet and breathing apparatus. Standard desert protection gear. It's not the most comfortable, but it will shield you from both the sandstorms and any contact with the thorn plants. Sarah's nose wrinkled in obvious distaste. That looks excessively cumbersome. Surely for a short journey. The journey will take approximately 6 hours by land cruiser, Jace interrupted. A habit he knew irritated her, but sometimes couldn't help. And that's assuming optimal conditions, which are rare in Solkar. Commander, Sarah said, her voice taking on the imperial tone she used when asserting her authority. I appreciate your concern, but I am not going to arrive at the Teleni embassy looking like a maintenance worker. I have specially designed attire for this meeting, appropriate to my station and the diplomatic significance of this visit. Jace felt his jaw tighten. Your Highness, with all due respect, fashion should not take precedence over safety. And with all due respect, Commander, she retorted, rising from her seat. You are my transport pilot, not my advisor. I'll be in my quarters preparing for landing. Please notify me when we've touched down. Before Jace could respond, she had already turned and exited the cockpit, the door sliding shut behind her, with what seemed like extra emphasis. Stubborn royal, Jace muttered under his breath, turning back to the controls. Commander, the AI interjected. I'm detecting unusual atmospheric disturbances ahead. Readings suggest a storm system forming directly in our planned flight path. Jace frowned, scanning the incoming data. The storm had appeared out of nowhere, far faster than typical Solkar weather patterns. Adjust course. We'll approach from the eastern vector instead. Adjusting, the AI confirmed. However, I should note that the eastern approach will take us directly over the densest region of Solkar thornfields. Wonderful, Jace sighed. Just wonderful. The ship lurched suddenly, throwing Jace against his restraints as warning alerts blared throughout the cockpit. What the hell was that? He demanded, his hands flying over the control panel. Atmospheric turbulence exceeding predicted parameters, the AI responded, its typically calm voice now edged with urgency. Propulsion systems functioning at 70% efficiency. Recommend immediate emergency landing protocols. Jace's military training kicked in, pushing aside frustration as he focused on the immediate crisis. Engage emergency protocols. Notify the princess to secure herself for rough landing. Princess Kane has been notified, the AI confirmed. She is not responding to communications. Another violent jolt shook the ship as they entered the upper atmosphere of Siroth. Through the view screen, Jace could see the angry swirl of dust clouds below, far larger and more violent than initially predicted. Override her door lock, Jace ordered. Emergency authorization, Wilder Alpha 7. Override accepted. Caution. Ship structural integrity compromised in sectors 3 and 4. Jace swore under his breath. Those were the sectors housing the princess's quarters. He quickly engaged the autopilot and unstrapped himself from the pilot's chair. Maintain course for emergency landing, he instructed the AI. I'm going to secure our passenger. The corridor leading to Sarah's quarters swayed beneath his feet as Jace made his way through the ship, bracing himself against the walls with each new tremor. When he reached her door, it slid open to reveal chaos. A section of the ceiling had collapsed, and equipment floated freely in the suddenly reduced artificial gravity. Princess, he called out, scanning the room. A muffled sound from the adjoining bathroom caught his attention. He found Sarah trapped beneath a fallen storage unit, struggling to free herself. Hold still, he instructed, kneeling beside her. With a grunt of effort, he lifted the heavy unit, allowing her to scramble out from beneath it. Are you hurt? He asked, quickly assessing her for visible injuries. I'm fine, she insisted, though her shaking hands betrayed her fear. What's happening? We've hit a storm system and need to make an emergency landing, Jace explained, taking her by the arm. We need to get to the secure pod in the center of the ship, now. For once, Sarah didn't argue. She allowed Jace to guide her through the trembling vessel, her earlier haughtiness replaced by wide-eyed alarm as they witnessed the damage to the ship's interior. They had just reached the central corridor when the most violent impact yet sent them both sprawling to the floor. The lights flickered and died, replaced seconds later by the dim red glow of emergency lighting. "Commander," the AI's voice crackled through the damaged communication system. "Propulsion failure is imminent. Impact with surface in approximately 45 seconds. "Come on!" Jace pulled Sarah to her feet and half-dragged her the remaining distance to the secure pod. A reinforced compartment designed to withstand even the most catastrophic crashes. They barely made it inside before the ship gave a final, shuddering groan, and the world around them dissolved into noise and motion. Jace instinctively wrapped his arms around Sarah, bracing them both against the impact as the nebula star plummeted toward the unforgiving surface of Cyroth. The crash was both deafening and disorienting. For several long moments after the ship came to rest, Jace remained still, mentally cataloging his body for injuries, finding none beyond bruises and minor cuts. He turned his attention to Sarah, who lay motionless beside him. "Princess," he ventured, gently shaking her shoulder. Relief washed over him when her eyes fluttered open, disoriented but alert. Are we dead?" she asked, her voice small and unlike her usual imperious tone. Jace couldn't help but smile slightly. "No, Your Highness. Just stranded, I'm afraid." With some effort, they extricated themselves from the secure pod. The ship had landed at an angle, making navigation through its tilted corridors challenging. The damage was extensive. Hull breaches in multiple locations, systems failing throughout the vessel. "AI, status report," Jace called out, hoping the central system was still functioning. "Multiple critical failures," came the response. The AI's voice distorted and intermittent. "Life support operating at minimal capacity. Communications array destroyed. Emergency beacon activated." "Can you give me an environmental reading outside the ship?" Jace asked, already moving toward the emergency equipment storage. "External atmosphere breathable but with high particulate content. Temperature, 42 degrees Celsius. Wind speed, 12 kilometers per hour and rising. Warning, storm front approaching from the northwest." "How long until it hits us?" "Approximately 3 hours at current speed." Jace nodded grimly, pulling out 2 protective suits from the storage unit. He turned to Sarah, who was watching him with a mixture of fear and defiance. "We need to secure the ship as best we can before the storm hits," he said, holding out one of the suits to her. "And we need to wear these. No arguments this time." To his surprise, Sarah reached for the suit without protest. "What do you need me to do?" "First, get this on," Jace instructed. "Then we need to assess the damage, salvage what supplies we can, and send a more detailed distress signal if possible." They worked in tense silence, Jace focusing on the ship's systems, while Sarah gathered survival supplies. The princess proved more capable than he had expected, methodically collecting water containers, emergency rations, and medical supplies. "The communications array is beyond repair," Jace announced after an hour of work. "The emergency beacon is functioning, but in this storm, I don't know if the signal will reach anyone." "How long before help arrives?" Sarah asked, securing the last of the water containers in a survival pack. Jace hesitated. "Under normal circumstances, a few days at most. But with the storm—" "I understand," she said quietly. "What's our next move?" "We need to," Jace began, but was interrupted by a sudden blaring alarm. "Warning," the AI announced. "Stormfront accelerating. Estimated arrival now 45 minutes. Intensity has increased to Category 4. Jace swore under his breath. "Change of plans. We need to secure ourselves inside the ship immediately. A Category 4 storm could tear through the damaged sections like paper." They worked frantically to reinforce the central compartment of the ship, sealing off breached areas and securing loose equipment. Just as they finished, the first winds of the storm reached them, howling around the crashed vessel like hungry predators testing their prey. "This should hold," Jace said, though he wasn't entirely convinced. "We just need to wait it out." Sarah looked around at their makeshift shelter, her expression unreadable. "And if it doesn't hold?" Jace met her gaze directly. "Then we have the suits. They're our last line of defense." The storm descended upon them with unexpected ferocity. The ship groaned and shuddered under the assault, sand and debris pounding against the hull with relentless force. Inside their reinforced compartment, Jace and Sarah could only wait, the howling winds making conversation nearly impossible. Hours passed with agonizing slowness. Occasionally, a particularly violent gust would shake the entire structure, causing them both to tense in anticipation of a breach. Yet somehow, their hasty reinforcements held. As the storm continued to rage outside, Jace noticed Sarah becoming increasingly restless, pacing the small space with growing agitation. "You should conserve your energy," he advised. "We don't know how long this will last." "I can't just sit here doing nothing," she retorted, though her usual edge was missing from her voice. "This is intolerable." "Being stuck with me? Or being stuck in a crashed ship during a sandstorm?" Jace asked, unable to resist the small jab. To his surprise, Sarah's lips curved into a slight smile. "Both, I suppose." The unexpected moment of levity was shattered by a deafening crack as a section of the ceiling gave way. Sand began pouring into the compartment like water. "Helmets on, now!" Jace shouted, already securing his own protective headgear. Sarah fumbled with her helmet, her fingers clumsy with panic. By the time Jace reached her side to help, she had managed to secure it, but not before inhaling a lungful of the swirling dust. She doubled over, coughing violently. "We need to move," Jace said, his voice muffled through the helmet's communication system. "This whole section could collapse." Supporting the still coughing princess, Jace led them through the ship toward the cargo bay, the most structurally sound area remaining. They had nearly reached it when a massive impact rocked the ship, throwing them both against a bulkhead. "Are you all right?" Jace asked, regaining his balance. Sarah nodded, but then pointed urgently toward the nearby airlock. To Jace's horror, the outer door was buckling inward, sand already trickling through the compromised seal. "Run!" he ordered, pushing her ahead of him toward the cargo bay. They barely made it inside before the airlock gave way completely. The force of the rushing sand slammed the cargo bay door shut behind them, sealing them in, but also trapping them, should the rest of the ship collapse. "The cargo bay has independent life support," Jace explained, catching his breath. "We should be safe here until the storm passes." Sarah removed her helmet, still coughing intermittently. "How long will that be?" "Sulcar storms typically last between 6 and 12 hours, Jace replied, checking the environmental controls. "This one's already been going for nearly 4. Sarah nodded, then suddenly swayed on her feet. Jace lunged forward, catching her before she could fall. "What's wrong?" he asked, alarmed by the sudden pallor of her blue skin. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice weak. "I feel strange, dizzy." Jace helped her to a makeshift seat on a cargo container, his mind racing through possibilities. "Did you hit your head during the crash? Or when we were thrown against the bulkhead?" "No," she shook her head. "It's not that. It feels like—" She trailed off, her eyes widening in sudden realization. "The sand. I breathed in the sand before my helmet was secure." Jace's blood ran cold. "The sulcar thorn plants. Their spores are carried in the sand during storms." He quickly retrieved the emergency medical kit. "We need to check if you've been exposed." A simple test confirmed their fears. Sarah had indeed inhaled sulcar thorn toxin. Her pupils were already dilating, and a fine sheen of sweat had broken out across her forehead. "How bad is it?" she asked, watching Jace's face carefully as he examined the test results. "I'm not going to lie to you," he said gravely. "The toxin is already in your bloodstream, Without proper medical treatment, it could cause serious complications. The reproductive cycle acceleration, Sarah whispered, genuine fear in her voice for the first time. Will that happen to me? Jace hesitated. The medical database suggested it was a possibility. Yes, but I don't know how quickly it progresses or exactly what it entails. I do, she said quietly. It's not just acceleration. The toxin doesn't just speed up our normal cycles. It triggers an ancient biological process, one from before Teleni were civilized, a survival mechanism for when our species faced extinction. She looked away, embarrassment evident in her posture. It forces compatibility with any nearby sentient species. It's why Solkar is forbidden to my people. The few Teleni who were exposed here in the past, they produced hybrid offspring within days of exposure. The implications hit Jace like a physical blow. Days, not months. Sarah nodded miserably. The toxin rewrites portions of our reproductive biology temporarily. The process is supposed to be excruciating and unstoppable once it begins. Then we need to stop it before it begins, Jace said with determination, turning back to the medical kit. There must be something in here that can help. Antihistamines, antitoxins, something. After a desperate search through the limited supplies, Jace found a general-purpose antitoxin injector. This might slow the progression, he said, but it's not specifically designed for Sulcar toxin. Sarah held out her arm without hesitation. Do it! Jace administered the injection, then continued searching through the kit. There's something else we need, he muttered. Something to counteract the hormonal changes. There's a trading post, Sarah reminded him. The one we were supposed to pass on our way to the embassy. Would they have medical supplies? Possibly, Jace acknowledged. But it's at least a 2-day walk from here, and that's in good conditions. With the storm. You said the storm might end in a few hours, Sarah pointed out. And if this toxin works as quickly as our histories claim, waiting might not be an option. Jace ran a hand through his hair, considering their limited choices. Even if I leave as soon as the storm passes, it would be at least 4 days round trip. Would the process be complete by then? Sarah's silver eyes held his gaze steadily. I don't know, but I do know that the longer we wait, the worse my chances become. The decision weighed heavily on Jace. Leaving Sarah alone in her condition was dangerous, but staying meant watching her suffer with no means to help. In the end, there was really only one choice. As soon as the storm passes, he said with finality, I'll head for the trading post. In the meantime, we need to keep monitoring your symptoms and do whatever we can to slow the toxin's progress. The hours that followed were tense and uncomfortable. Sarah's condition deteriorated steadily, fever rising, muscles cramping, her normally composed demeanor crumbling under waves of pain. Jace did what he could with their limited supplies, applying cold compresses when her temperature spiked and administering the few pain relievers they had when the cramps became too severe. I was a fool, Sarah admitted during a brief respite from the pain. You warned me about the protective gear, and I dismissed you out of pride. We all make mistakes, Jace replied, replacing the compress on her forehead with a fresh one. Not mistakes that could trigger an interspecies diplomatic crisis, she said, with a weak attempt at humor. If I return to the embassy pregnant with a human hybrid, that's not going to happen, Jace assured her. We'll get the treatment you need. Sarah reached out, catching his hand in a surprisingly strong grip. Promise me something, Commander. If you can't find treatment, if it becomes clear that the process can't be stopped, you won't bring me back to the embassy. The shame would destroy my family's standing, and the political fallout could reignite tensions between our peoples. What are you saying? Jace asked, though he feared he already knew. I'm saying I would rather disappear than become the catalyst for renewed conflict, she replied simply. Promise me. Jace shook his head firmly. I'm not promising anything of the sort. We're going to fix this. And then we're going to complete your diplomatic mission as planned. Your optimism is charming, Sarah murmured, her eyes drifting closed as exhaustion claimed her. If misplaced. After what seemed an eternity, the howling of the storm finally began to subside. Jace checked the ship's remaining sensors, confirming that the worst had passed. I need to go now, he told Sarah, who was drifting in and out of consciousness. The storm's down to Category 1, which is navigable with the protective gear. He had already prepared a small pack with essential supplies, water, emergency rations, basic navigation tools, and a portable distress beacon. The journey would be grueling, especially in the aftermath of the storm. But he had no choice. Here, he said, placing a communication device in Sarah's hand. It's short range, but it should allow us to stay in contact as long as I'm within about 50 kilometers. If anything changes, if your condition worsens, you tell me immediately. Understand? Sarah nodded weakly. Be careful, Jace, she said, using his first name for the first time since they'd met. The desert is treacherous, even without the storm. I'll be back before you know it, he promised, securing his helmet. Try to rest and keep taking the antitoxin every 6 hours. It's not a cure, but it might slow things down. With a final glance at the vulnerable princess, Jace cycled through the cargo bay's secondary airlock and stepped out onto the surface of Siroth for the first time. The landscape that greeted him was alien and hostile. The storm had reshaped the desert, creating new dunes and exposing previously buried obstacles. The air, even filtered through his helmet, tasted of minerals and something sharp that he couldn't identify. The twin suns of the Siroth system beat down mercilessly, their combined heat already seeping through his protective suit. Using the ship's navigation data, which he had downloaded to a portable device, Jace oriented himself toward the trading post and began walking. The going was difficult from the start, each step sinking ankle-deep into the loose sand. Each breath labored in the thin, hot air. By nightfall, Jace had covered less than 15 kilometers, far short of his goal. The temperature dropped rapidly with the setting of the suns, forcing him to make camp in the lee of a large rock formation. As he huddled against the cold, he checked in with Sarah via the communicator. "How are you holding up?" he asked, trying to keep the worry from his voice. "I've been better," came her faint reply. "The pain comes in waves now, and there's something else." "What is it?" Jace pressed when she didn't continue. "I can feel it happening," she whispered. "The changes, it's like my body isn't my own anymore. Like it's being rewritten from the inside." Jace closed his eyes, fighting back a wave of guilt and frustration. "I'm moving as fast as I can. Just hold on a little longer." "I'm trying," she assured him. "How far have you gotten?" "About 15 kilometers," he admitted. "The terrain is worse than I expected, but I'll make better time tomorrow." There was a pause before Sarah spoke again. "Jace, if you don't make it back in time—" "I will," he interrupted firmly. "Get some rest, Sarah. I'll contact you at dawn." The night seemed endless, with Jace managing only brief snatches of sleep between bouts of bone-deep cold and the constant anxiety about Sarah's deteriorating condition. When the first sun finally crested the horizon, he was already up and preparing to continue his journey. The second day proved even more challenging than the first. The storm had exposed vast fields of sulcar thorn plants, their twisted forms rising from the sand like malevolent sculptures. Navigating around them added hours to his journey, forcing him to make difficult detours through unstable terrain. By midday, exhaustion and dehydration were taking their toll. Jace's steps became unsteady, his thoughts increasingly disjointed. He had just decided to take a brief rest when the ground beneath him suddenly gave way, sending him tumbling down a concealed slope. The world spun in a disorienting blur of sand and sky before Jace came to a jarring halt at the bottom of the depression. Pain lanced through his left leg, and when he tried to stand, it buckled beneath him. A quick examination revealed a deep gash where his protective suit had been torn, likely from contact with a sharp rock during his fall. "Damn it," he hissed, applying pressure to slow the bleeding. The wound itself wasn't life-threatening, but it would significantly impede his progress. Worse, the tear in his suit now left him vulnerable to the very toxins he was trying to find treatment for. With grim determination, Jace patched the suit as best he could with the emergency repair kit from his pack. The seal wouldn't be perfect, but it might be enough to prevent direct contact with the sulcar spores. As for the wound, he cleaned and bandaged it with supplies from his limited medical kit, then fashioned a crude splint to support his injured leg. Standing was an exercise in willpower, each step sending waves of pain through his body. But the thought of Sarah, alone and suffering back at the ship, drove him forward. He couldn't fail her. Not now. Progress slowed to an agonizing crawl. What should have been a 2-day journey stretched into a 3rd day, with Jace pushing himself beyond reasonable limits. He rationed his water carefully, knowing that dehydration in the desert would kill him long before starvation. The communication device crackled with increasing static as Sarah's condition continued to deteriorate. Her once articulate speech became slurred, her reports of symptoms increasingly concerning. By the 3rd night, she was barely coherent, lost in fever dreams and pain. "I can see them," she whispered during one brief moment of lucidity. "Our children, Jace. They would have been beautiful." "Don't talk like that," Jace replied sharply. "You're not going to die, and we're not having children. I'm almost at the trading post. Just one more day." "Too late," she murmured. "It's already happening. I can feel it. The changes are complete. My body is ready to—" Her voice faded into incoherent muttering before the communication cut out entirely. Desperation lent Jace strength he didn't know he possessed. Ignoring the screaming pain in his leg, he pushed on through the night, navigating by the stars and the faint glow on the horizon that suggested civilization. By dawn of the 4th day, he could finally see it, the atmospheric shields of the trading post shimmering in the distance like a mirage. The last kilometer was the hardest, with Jace practically crawling by the time he reached the outpost's perimeter. The guards stationed at the entrance initially raised their weapons at his approach, then rushed to assist when they realized his condition. "Medical! Need medical!" Jace gasped as they helped him inside. "Sulcar toxin. Teleni female." The guards exchanged alarmed glances before one of them activated their communication device. "Get Dr. Vargas," he ordered. "Now, and prepare a medevac ship." Jace was rushed to the outpost's medical facility, a surprisingly well-equipped space given the remote location. A stern-faced woman with streaks of gray in her dark hair met them at the entrance, immediately taking charge of the situation. "I'm Dr. Vargas," she introduced herself briskly, helping the guards transfer Jace to an examination table. "You mentioned sulcar toxin and a Teleni female. Where is she?" "Crashed ship," Jace explained, fighting to stay conscious. "About 60 kilometers northeast. Princess Sarah Kane of the Teleni Empire. Inhaled toxin during a storm 4 days ago." Dr. Vargas's expression grew grave. 4 days? And she's exhibiting reproductive acceleration symptoms? Jace nodded weakly. "Can you help her?" "There's an antidote," the doctor confirmed, already preparing instruments. "But after 4 days, it may be too late to completely reverse the process. Let me treat your injuries first. Then, we'll send a team immediately." "No time," Jace insisted, struggling to sit up. "Give me the antidote. I'll take it to her." "In your condition?" Dr. Vargas scoffed. "You'd never make it back alive." "Then give it to your team," Jace pleaded. "But they need to leave now. Every minute counts." The doctor studied him for a moment, then nodded sharply. "You're right. I'll prepare the antidote and the hormone regulators she'll need. Our fastest ship can reach her in under an hour." As Dr. Vargas worked, a young medic treated Jace's injuries, cleaning and properly sealing the leg wound, administering antibiotics and rehydration fluids. Despite his protests that he needed to return to Sarah immediately, they insisted on at least stabilizing his condition. "The Medivac team has departed," Dr. Vargas informed him, after what seemed an eternity. "They're taking a direct route with atmospheric clearance. They should reach your ship within 40 minutes. Jace closed his eyes in relief. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," the doctor cautioned. "As I said, after 4 days of exposure, the antidote may not fully reverse the changes. And there's something else you should know." Jace tensed at her tone. "What is it?" "The princess's diplomatic status," Dr. Vargas said carefully. "I've had to notify both the Teleni embassy and the Human Alliance outpost of the situation. They're concerned, to put it mildly." "Concerned?" Jace repeated. "A Teleni royal experiencing reproductive acceleration while in the company of a human military officer." The doctor raised an eyebrow. "The political implications are significant. Representatives from both sides are en route to meet the medical team at your ship." Jace swore under his breath. The diplomatic complications had been inevitable, he supposed, but facing them so soon was less than ideal. "I need to be there," he insisted. "When can I leave?" "Your injuries," Dr. Vargas began, "are not life-threatening," Jace interrupted. "And I'm not letting Sarah face this alone." After some argument, the doctor reluctantly agreed to allow Jace to join a second transport heading to the crash site. By the time they arrived, the scene had transformed into a flurry of activity. The medevac team had already extracted Sarah from the ship and transferred her to their specialized medical transport. 2 other vessels had landed nearby, one bearing the insignia of the Human Alliance, the other the distinctive colors of the Teleni Diplomatic Corps. Jace limped toward the medical transport, ignoring the shouts from the Alliance officers who had spotted him. Inside the transport, he found Sarah connected to various monitoring devices, her skin paler than he'd ever seen it, but her eyes clear and alert. "You made it," she said softly when she saw him. "I promised I would," he replied, moving to her side. "How are you feeling?" "Better. Now that the antidote is working," she said. "The pain is subsiding. But—" A tall, imposing Teleni male in elaborate diplomatic attire interrupted them, pushing past Jace to stand at Sarah's bedside. "Princess Kane, this is an unprecedented situation. The Emperor is deeply concerned about the potential implications." "Ambassador Drek," Sarah acknowledged wearily. "I understand his concern, but as you can see, I am receiving treatment." "Treatment that may be too late," the ambassador stated bluntly. "Dr. Vargas has informed us that the reproductive modifications are likely already complete. Tests are being conducted now to determine if conception has occurred." Jace felt as though the ground had dropped out from beneath him. Despite all his efforts, despite the grueling journey and the danger they had faced, they might still be too late to prevent the very outcome they had been fighting against. Before he could speak, the door to the transport slammed open, and a Human Alliance officer in the distinctive uniform of a major general stormed in. "Commander Wilder," he barked, "you are hereby ordered to return to Alliance headquarters for immediate debriefing and investigation." "Investigation?" Jace repeated. "For what exactly?" "For potentially causing an interspecies diplomatic incident," the general replied coldly. "If Princess Kane is carrying a hybrid child, the implications for the peace treaty are severe. Your actions, or inactions, will be thoroughly examined." "This is absurd," Jace protested. "I risked my life to get her treatment. I walked 60 kilometers through a desert with a wounded leg to find help." "After crashing the ship in the first place," the general pointed out. "After exposing a Teleni royal to a known hazardous substance, He did no such thing, Sarah interrupted, her voice surprisingly strong. The crash was unavoidable due to the storm, and my exposure to the toxin was entirely my own fault. Commander Wilder explicitly warned me about the dangers and provided protective equipment, which I refused to wear out of pride. The general looked skeptical. Regardless, Commander Wilder, you will return with me immediately. Princess Kane will be escorted to the Teleni embassy by Ambassador Drek once the medical team clears her for transport. No, Sarah said firmly. I will not be separated from Commander Wilder. Your Highness, Ambassador Drek began. The protocols for this situation are clear. You must return to the embassy for proper care and for decisions to be made about the potential offspring. What decisions? Jace demanded, a sudden protective instinct flaring within him. The ambassador's expression was carefully neutral. That is an internal Teleni matter, Commander. It concerns me if it involves a child that might be mine, Jace insisted. A tense silence fell over the transport. The possibility that had been theoretical was suddenly very real, hanging in the air between them. Dr. Vargas chose that moment to enter, her expression grave as she consulted a data pad. I have the test results, she announced without preamble. All eyes turned to her expectantly. Princess Sarah is indeed pregnant, she confirmed. The sulcar toxin has successfully triggered the accelerated reproductive cycle. Based on hormone levels, conception occurred approximately 36 hours ago. The news hit like a physical blow. Jace found himself reaching for Sarah's hand without thinking. A gesture she returned by gripping his fingers tightly. This is unprecedented, Ambassador Drek muttered, his composure finally cracking. A Teleni royal carrying a human hybrid. The Emperor will need to be informed immediately. General Harker, the doctor continued. I should note that due to the unique nature of sulcar-induced reproduction, this pregnancy will progress much faster than normal. Princess Kane will likely give birth within weeks, not months. All the more reason for her to return to the embassy immediately, the ambassador insisted. And all the more reason for Commander Wilder to remain with her, Sarah countered. This child is as much his as mine. The general's face darkened with anger. Commander Wilder is an alliance officer. His duty is to his command, not to whatever this situation has become. With respect, General, Jace said, straightening despite the pain in his leg. My immediate duty is to Princess Sarah. I was assigned as her escort, and that assignment hasn't been completed. You were assigned as her transport pilot, General Harker corrected harshly. A role you failed at when you crashed the ship. A crash that would have killed us both if not for Commander Wilder's quick thinking. Sarah interjected. A crash that was unavoidable due to the storm. The argument might have continued indefinitely, if not for a sharp beep from the ambassador's communication device. He stepped away to answer it, his expression shifting from annoyance to shock as he listened to the message. I understand, Your Majesty, he said finally, bowing slightly to the unseen caller. It will be as you command. He turned back to the group, his demeanor completely transformed. The Emperor has been informed of the situation, he announced. He has issued a direct command regarding this matter. Sarah tensed visibly. And what has my father decreed? Commander Wilder is to be brought to the Imperial Palace immediately, the ambassador stated. He is to undergo the trial of worth. Jace frowned in confusion, but Sarah's sharp intake of breath told him this was significant. What is the trial of worth? He asked. An ancient tradition, Sarah explained, her voice tight with emotion. When a non-Teleni claims paternity of a royal child, they must prove their worth through 3 challenges: mind, body, and spirit. It hasn't been invoked in generations. And if I refuse? Jace asked, though he already suspected the answer. Then the child will be considered illegitimate, Ambassador Drek replied. It will be removed from the royal line and disposed of according to tradition. Disposed of, Jace repeated incredulously. You mean killed? The ambassador didn't deny it. The purity of the royal bloodline is paramount. Without the trial, there is no legitimacy. This is outrageous, General Harker sputtered. Commander Wilder is an alliance officer. He cannot simply be whisked away to participate in some barbaric alien ritual. Actually, General, Jace said quietly, I can, and I will. He turned to Sarah. I won't let them harm our child. The journey to the Teleni Imperial Palace was conducted in tense silence. Despite General Harker's protests, the diplomatic agreements between the Human Alliance and the Teleni Empire gave the Emperor's direct commands precedence in this situation. Jace found himself aboard a sleek Teleni diplomatic vessel, his injuries treated by their medical staff, but his status somewhere between guest and prisoner. Sarah had been transported separately, a tradition, Ambassador Drek explained, to ensure no further contact between the mother and the claimant until after the trial of worth. The separation left Jace with nothing but his thoughts and the growing realization of just how drastically his life had changed in the span of a few days. The Teleni homeworld was as different from Siroth as possible, a lush, verdant planet with vast oceans and sprawling cities that seemed to grow from the landscape rather than being built upon it. The Imperial Palace dominated the capital city, its crystalline towers reflecting the light of the planet's single sun in dazzling patterns. Jace was escorted to private quarters upon arrival, lavishly appointed but unmistakably secured. A team of Teleni attendants provided him with traditional garments and explained that the trial would begin the following morning. The trial consists of 3 challenges, the chief attendant explained. The challenge of mind, the challenge of body, and the challenge of spirit. Each must be completed successfully for you to be deemed worthy of claiming paternity of a royal child. And what exactly do these challenges entail? Jace asked. That cannot be revealed in advance, the attendant replied. It would defeat the purpose of the trial. Know only that they will test you to your limits, possibly beyond. That night, Jace slept fitfully, his dreams filled with images of Sarah suffering alone in the crashed ship, of endless desert stretching before him, and of a child with human features and Teleni blue skin crying out for protection. Morning came too quickly. Jace was escorted to a vast circular chamber deep within the palace, where dozens of Teleni nobles had gathered to witness the trial. On a raised dais at the center of the room stood Emperor Tarek Kane, his resemblance to Sarah unmistakable in the silver of his eyes and the regal set of his features. Sarah herself was nowhere to be seen. When Jace inquired about her absence, he was told that tradition forbade the mother's presence during the trial, lest her emotions influence the proceedings. Jace Wilder of Earth, the Emperor's voice resonated through the chamber without need for amplification. You stand before the Teleni court claiming paternity of a royal child. Do you understand what this claim entails? Jace stepped forward, standing as tall as his still healing leg would allow. I do, Your Majesty. And do you freely consent to undergo the trial of worth, knowing that failure in any aspect means forfeiture of all claims to the child? Jace hesitated only briefly. I do. The Emperor nodded once. Then let the trial begin. First, the challenge of mind. A section of the floor slid open, and from below rose a complex device that Jace couldn't immediately identify. It appeared to be some sort of neural interface, with a chair positioned beneath an array of delicate instruments. The challenge of mind requires you to navigate the labyrinth of ancestors, the Emperor explained. Your consciousness will be projected into a construct containing the accumulated wisdom and challenges of the Teleni royal line. You must find your way to the center and return with the token of insight. And the catch? Jace asked, eyeing the device warily. A thin smile crossed the Emperor's face. The labyrinth reshapes itself according to your fears and weaknesses. Many have been lost within it, their minds trapped until their bodies wither away. With that cheerful thought, Jace was guided to the chair. Teleni attendants secured the neural interface to his head, the cool metal of the device pressing against his temples. "Begin," the Emperor commanded. The world dissolved around Jace, replaced by endless corridors of crystalline walls that reflected distorted versions of himself back at him. The labyrinth was beautiful and terrifying, constantly shifting, presenting him with puzzles that required not just intelligence but emotional insight to solve. He encountered spectral figures of Teleni ancestors who posed riddles about honor, duty, and sacrifice. He faced illusions of his own past failures, the military mission that had gone wrong and cost the lives of his team, the relationship he had abandoned out of fear of commitment, the family he had distanced himself from. Time lost all meaning within the labyrinth. What might have been hours or days of struggle eventually led Jace to the center, where a small, crystalline token hovered in midair. As he reached for it, the final challenge manifested. A perfect replica of Sarah holding an infant with mixed Teleni and human features. "Why do you want this child?" the illusion asked. "Is it duty, pride, or something more?" Jace hesitated, knowing instinctively that his answer would determine success or failure. At first, it was responsibility, he admitted. I felt obligated to protect what I had helped create, however unintentionally. The illusion waited, clearly expecting more. But now, Jace continued, the realization forming as he spoke. Now I want this child because it represents something I never thought possible. A bridge between our peoples. Yes, but also a future I never allowed myself to imagine. A family. A purpose beyond duty. The illusion of Sarah smiled and extended the token of insight to him. Then take it, and return to those who wait. Jace grasped the token, and reality snapped back into focus. He found himself still in the chair in the Imperial chamber, the neural interface being removed by attendants. From the expressions of those watching, he gathered that he had been under for longer than expected. The claimant has completed the challenge of mind, announced an official beside the Emperor. He returns with the token of insight. Jace held up the small crystal, which had somehow manifested physically in his hand. The Emperor nodded, in what might have been approval. The challenge of body will commence after the claimant has rested. The respite was brief, barely enough time for Jace to eat and allow the lingering disorientation from the neural interface to fade. His injured leg had been treated again by Teleni physicians, but it still ached as he was escorted to an outdoor arena for the second challenge. This venue was even larger than the previous chamber, with tiered seating surrounding a circular field of packed earth. The crowd had grown substantially, with not just nobles, but ordinary Teleni citizens filling the stands. News of the trial had apparently spread throughout the capital. The Emperor once again presided from a royal box overlooking the arena. The challenge of body, he proclaimed, tests not just strength, but endurance, agility, and the willingness to endure pain for what one claims as their own. At a signal from the Emperor, a gate at the far end of the arena opened. What emerged made Jace's blood run cold. A massive beast with the general shape of a feline predator, but covered in chitinous plates. Its 6 limbs ending in wicked claws. Multiple eyes gleaming with predatory intelligence. The Carthax is a sacred guardian of the royal house, the Emperor explained. Your challenge is not to kill it, which would be both impossible and sacrilegious, but to obtain the token of strength from the collar around its neck. Jace surveyed the arena quickly, noting that while there were no weapons provided, the space contained various obstacles and structures that might offer tactical advantages. Any rules I should be aware of? He asked the official beside him. You may not leave the arena, came the reply. Otherwise, you may use whatever means are at your disposal. With that limited guidance, Jace stepped onto the field. The Carthax immediately focused on him, its multiple eyes tracking his movement with disturbing precision. It began circling, clearly assessing him as prey. Jace's military training took over. Direct confrontation would be suicide. The creature outweighed him by several hundred kilograms and had natural weapons he couldn't hope to match. Instead, he needed to use the environment and his human agility to his advantage. The Carthax charged without warning, its speed belying its massive size. Jace barely managed to dive behind one of the stone obstacles, feeling the rush of air as the creature's claws swiped where he had been standing moments before. What followed was a deadly game of cat and mouse. Jace used the structures in the arena to stay just out of reach, studying the Carthax's movement patterns and looking for weaknesses. The creature was formidable, but, he noted, seemed to have difficulty making sharp turns at speed. After several near-fatal encounters, Jace formulated a plan. He positioned himself near a tall column, then deliberately exposed himself to draw the Carthax's attention. As expected, the beast charged full speed. At the last possible moment, Jace leaped aside and scaled the column with desperate speed. The Carthax, unable to stop its momentum, slammed into the stone with enough force to crack it. The impact momentarily stunned the creature, giving Jace the opening he needed. He dropped from the column directly onto the Carthax's back, his hands finding the ornate collar around its thick neck. The token of strength was embedded in the center of the collar, a metal disc that pulsed with an inner light. As Jace's fingers closed around it, the Carthax recovered from its daze and began bucking violently, trying to dislodge the unwelcome rider. Pain lanced through Jace's wounded leg as he clung to the thrashing creature, but he maintained his grip on both the collar and the token. With a final, desperate wrench, he tore the token free just as the Carthax rolled, throwing him clear across the arena. Jace landed hard. The breath knocked from his lungs. The token clutched tightly in his fist. The Carthax prepared for another charge, but a signal from the Emperor halted it in its tracks. The beast reluctantly retreated to its gate, leaving Jace sprawled in the dust, battered but alive. "The claimant has obtained the token of strength," the official announced, as Teleni medics rushed to assist Jace. "The challenge of body is complete." This time, Jace was granted a full day to recover from his injuries. The Teleni physicians were skilled, using technologies unfamiliar to him to accelerate healing and reduce pain. By the following morning, he was able to walk without assistance, though his body still bore the evidence of his encounter with the Carthax. The final challenge took place in a location unlike any Jace had seen before, a natural cavern deep beneath the palace, illuminated by bioluminescent organisms that cast an ethereal blue glow over everything. In the center of the cavern lay a still pool of water, so clear it was nearly invisible, its surface undisturbed by even the slightest ripple. The gathering for this challenge was much smaller. Only the Emperor, a few high officials, and what appeared to be religious leaders in elaborate ceremonial attire. "The challenge of spirit," the Emperor spoke softly, his voice, nonetheless carrying in the hushed cavern, "is the most difficult of all. Many who pass the tests of mind and body falter here, for it requires complete surrender of the self." One of the religious leaders stepped forward, carrying a small vial of luminescent liquid. "This is the essence of truth," he explained. "When consumed, it strips away all pretense, all deception, even self-deception. In the pool of reflection, you will face your true self and your true motivations." "And the token?" Jace asked, his voice sounding unnaturally loud in the quiet space. "Will reveal itself if you are worthy," came the cryptic reply. With no further explanation offered, Jace accepted the vial. The liquid tasted surprisingly sweet, with an aftertaste like electricity dancing across his tongue. Almost immediately, the edges of his vision began to blur, and the cavern seemed to expand infinitely around him. Following an instinct he couldn't explain, Jace stepped into the pool. The water was neither warm nor cold, but it enveloped him like a living thing, drawing him deeper until he was completely submerged. underwater, with lungs that should have been burning for air, but somehow weren't. Jace found himself confronted by a series of visions, moments from his life when he had made critical choices, shown from perspectives he had never considered before. He saw himself through the eyes of the soldiers who had died under his command, felt their loyalty and their fear. He experienced his parents' disappointment when he had chosen military service over the family business they had built for him. He witnessed the pain of the woman he had once loved and left because commitment terrified him more than combat ever had. Each vision forced him to confront truths he had avoided: his ambition, his fear of vulnerability, his habit of using duty as a shield against genuine connection. The essence of truth left no room for self-justification or denial. Then came the most difficult vision of all: Sarah as he had first seen her. Proud and distant, contrasted with Sarah as she had been in the crashed ship, vulnerable and in pain because of choices she had made. He felt her initial disdain for him, her gradual respect as he fought to save her, and eventually, something deeper that had formed between them during their shared ordeal. The vision shifted to an infant, their child, and all the possible futures that stretched before it. Some were bright with promise, others dark with rejection and conflict. Jace saw clearly that the child's fate depended not just on the outcome of the trial, but on choices he and Sarah would make for years to come. A question formed in his mind, not in words but in pure concept. Why do you claim this child? The answer came not from calculated thought, but from a place of absolute truth. Because I already love them. Because they deserve a father who will fight for them. Because in saving Sarah, in enduring the desert, and now these trials, I have already committed myself to their future. Something small and warm materialized in Jace's hand beneath the water, the token of spirit. A simple disc that pulsed with the rhythm of a heartbeat. As his fingers closed around it, the pool released him, propelling him back to the surface. Jace emerged gasping, the token clutched to his chest, his mind still reeling from the visions. The Teleni officials watched in silence as he waded to the edge of the pool and pulled himself out, water streaming from his clothes. The claimant has received the token of spirit, the religious leader announced. All 3 challenges have been met. The Emperor stepped forward, his expression unreadable. Jace Wilder of Earth, he said formally, you have completed the trial of worth. Present the tokens. With hands that trembled slightly from the lingering effects of the essence of truth, Jace held out the 3 tokens: insight, strength, and spirit. To his surprise, they began to glow more intensely as they were brought together, eventually merging into a single amulet of intricate design. The Amulet of Worthiness. The Emperor identified it. Not seen in completeness for 7 generations. He took the amulet from Jace's outstretched hand and examined it closely before addressing the assembled officials. The trial is complete. The claimant has proven his worth. Let it be recorded that Jace Wilder of Earth is recognized as the legitimate father of the royal child carried by Princess Sarah Kane. A murmur of surprise ran through the small gathering. Clearly, few had expected a human to complete the trial successfully. There is one matter that remains, the Emperor continued. The child's status in the line of succession. With respect, Your Majesty, Jace said, finding his voice at last. That decision should include Sarah, Princess Kane. For the first time, the Emperor's stern expression softened slightly. Indeed it should, and it will. You have earned that right through the trial. He gestured to an attendant. Bring my daughter to us. Sarah arrived minutes later, looking far healthier than when Jace had last seen her. The accelerated pregnancy was already visible, her normally slender form showing a distinct curve beneath her elaborate royal attire. Her face lit up when she saw Jace, though she maintained her composure in the formal setting. Father, she acknowledged the Emperor with a slight bow. I understand the trial has been completed. It has, the Emperor confirmed. Jace Wilder has passed all 3 challenges and has been recognized as the legitimate father of your child. Sarah's relief was palpable. Then the child will be spared. More than spared, the Emperor replied. The child's place in the succession must now be determined. He turned to address both of them. Traditionally, a child born of the trial of worth is considered a full member of the royal line, regardless of their mixed heritage. However, given the unprecedented nature of a human-Teleni union, there will be complications. Political complications, Sarah clarified, her tone suggesting she had already given this considerable thought. The conservative factions will resist recognizing a hybrid child as a potential heir. Indeed, the Emperor agreed. Which leaves us with a decision to make, one that concerns not just the child's status, but your future as well. Sarah, Jace, still processing the implications of having officially claimed paternity of a royal Teleni child, looked between father and daughter. What exactly are the options here? The Emperor regarded him thoughtfully. There are 3 paths before you. First, the child could be recognized as a member of the royal family, but explicitly removed from the line of succession, avoiding the political conflict, but potentially marking them as lesser in the eyes of our society. Unacceptable, Sarah said immediately. Second, the Emperor continued, Sarah could renounce her own place in the succession, allowing her and the child to live as private citizens of the empire, free from the burdens and expectations of royalty. Sarah's expression was unreadable as she considered this option. And the third path? Jace prompted. The Emperor's gaze was piercing. The third option is marriage, a formal, political union between you, Commander Wilder, and my daughter. Such a marriage would be unprecedented, the first sanctioned union between a human and a member of the Teleni royal family. It would face opposition, but with my blessing and the legitimacy conferred by the trial of worth, the child would retain their place in the succession. Silence fell over the cavern as the weight of these options settled upon them. Jace looked at Sarah, trying to gauge her reaction to the idea of marriage to a man she had known for barely a week, a man from a species her people had once been at war with. "What do you want, Sarah?" he asked quietly. Sarah met his gaze directly. "What I want has rarely mattered in matters of state," she replied. "But in this instance, I find my duty and my desire aligned for perhaps the first time." She took a step closer to him. "You risked your life to save mine. You endured the desert and the trial for a child you never intended to father. You have shown more courage and integrity than most Teleni nobles I have known all my life." She took his hand, her blue fingers intertwining with his. "I choose the third path, marriage, with all its challenges and possibilities." Jace felt as though he were still under the influence of the essence of truth as he replied, "I choose it too." The Emperor observed their joined hands with an expression that might have been approval. "Then it shall be so. Preparations will begin immediately for both the marriage ceremony and the accelerated birth. The diplomatic implications will be significant." "The human alliance won't be pleased," Jace acknowledged. "General Harker was already talking about court-martial before we left Cyroth." "Let me worry about the alliance," the Emperor said dismissively. "Your successful completion of the trial gives me considerable leverage in diplomatic negotiations. They will accept this union, or they will face consequences in our trade agreements." "Politics," Jace thought wearily. "Always politics." But looking at Sarah, at the determination in her silver eyes and the protective way her hand rested on her already swelling abdomen, he knew that whatever diplomatic storms lay ahead, they would weather them together. The formal announcement of their engagement sent shockwaves through both the Teleni Empire and the Human Alliance. As expected, there was resistance from conservative factions on both sides. But the Emperor's unequivocal support, combined with the legitimacy conferred by the trial of worth, forestalled any serious opposition. General Harker arrived at the palace 3 days later, his face set in lines of barely contained fury as he was escorted to a private meeting with Jace. "Do you have any idea what you've done, Wilder?" he demanded without preamble. "You were sent to transport a princess, not marry her." "Things changed," Jace replied simply. "The crash, the Sulcar toxin. And now you're going to be father to a hybrid royal," the general interrupted. "Do you honestly believe this is going to end well? The Teleni are manipulating you, using you to gain leverage over the Alliance." "With respect, General," Jace countered, "I've spent more time with Princess Sarah in the past week than you have in your entire life. This isn't a political maneuver, at least, not on her part. She's facing the same opposition from her conservatives that I am from mine." "Your loyalty is to the Alliance," Harker reminded him sharply. "A loyalty you seem to have conveniently forgotten." Jace met the general's gaze steadily. "My loyalty is to what's right. And right now, that means standing by Sarah and our child." "Then consider this your official discharge," Harker snapped, tossing a data chip onto the table between them. "Effective immediately. The Alliance wants no part of whatever diplomatic disaster you're brewing here." As the general turned to leave, Jace called after him. "General, when you return to headquarters, tell them this marriage isn't the disaster they think it is. It's an opportunity, a chance for genuine understanding between our peoples, beyond treaties and formal agreements." Harker paused at the door, looking back with a slightly less hostile expression. "I'll tell them. Whether they listen is another matter entirely." He hesitated, then added grudgingly, "For what it's worth, Wilder, completing the trial of worth was impressive. No human has ever done that before." After the general's departure, Jace found Sarah in the palace gardens, seated beside a pool filled with luminescent aquatic life. The accelerated pregnancy had progressed significantly in just a few days, giving her the appearance of being several months along, rather than barely a week. "General Harker has formally discharged me from the Alliance military," Jace informed her, taking a seat beside her. Sarah nodded, unsurprised. "I expected as much. Are you regretful?" Jace considered the question seriously. "The military has been my life for over a decade. There's a part of me that will miss it." He reached for her hand. "But no, I'm not regretful. Some choices transcend duty." "My father has offered you a position as a diplomatic advisor," Sarah mentioned. "Given your unique perspective as both a former Alliance officer and the future consort to a Teleni princess." "Consort," Jace repeated with a slight smile. "That will take some getting used to." "There will be many adjustments for both of us," Sarah acknowledged. "My people will not easily accept a human in the royal family, regardless of my father's blessing or the trial of worth. And I know nothing about Teleni court politics or traditions," Jace added. "I'm liable to cause an interstellar incident by using the wrong fork at dinner." Sarah laughed, a sound he had heard so rarely that it still surprised him. "We have tutors for that. The greater challenge will be raising a child who belongs to two worlds." "Speaking of which," Jace said, placing a gentle hand on her rounded abdomen, "have the physicians said anything more about what to expect? The accelerated gestation is concerning." "They believe the birth will occur within 3 weeks," Sarah replied. "Far faster than a normal Teleni pregnancy, which typically lasts 15 months, but slower than the stories of Sulcar-induced reproduction suggested. Apparently, the antidote slowed the process somewhat." "And the child's health?" "All indications are positive," she assured him. "The accelerated development appears to be proceeding normally, just faster. They are monitoring for any complications, of course." Jace nodded, relieved, but still concerned about the unprecedented nature of the situation. "Boy or girl?" "Unknown," Sarah replied with a small smile. Tilani children are immune to such simple detection methods until birth. It is one of the few true surprises in our highly regulated lives. The following weeks passed in a blur of wedding preparations, diplomatic negotiations, medical examinations, and intensive cultural education for Jace. The marriage ceremony was scheduled to take place just days before Sarah's expected delivery, a timing that raised eyebrows among the more traditional Tilani nobles, but was diplomatically necessary to ensure the child's undisputed legitimacy. True to the emperor's word, the human alliance found itself with little choice but to accept the situation. The Tilani Empire controlled key resources needed for interstellar travel, and the emperor made it clear that any attempt to interfere with his daughter's marriage would have severe economic consequences. A delegation of alliance officials was dispatched to attend the ceremony, their presence a reluctant acknowledgement of the union's legitimacy. The day before the wedding, Jace found himself standing on a balcony overlooking the capital city, the amulet he had earned in the Trial of Worth hanging around his neck as a symbol of his new status. The city below was a dazzling display of lights and activity, preparations for the royal wedding visible even from a distance. Having second thoughts, came a familiar voice behind him. Jace turned to find Sarah approaching, her movement now slow and deliberate due to her advanced pregnancy. Despite the physical discomfort she must have been feeling, she carried herself with the same regal bearing he had first noticed aboard the Nebula Star. "Not about us," he assured her. "Just wondering if I'm ready for all of this." He gestured toward the city. "I'm a soldier, Sarah. I've never aspired to be a political figure or a royal consort." Sarah joined him at the railing, her gaze following his out over the city. "I never aspired to fall in love with a human, or to carry a hybrid child," she replied. "Yet, here we are, defying expectations and traditions." Jace looked at her in surprise. It was the first time either of them had explicitly mentioned love. Their relationship had developed under the most unusual circumstances, forged in crisis and cemented by duty to their unborn child. Genuine feelings had grown between them, certainly, but they had both been careful about defining those feelings too precisely. "Is that what this is?" he asked quietly. "Love." Sarah met his gaze, her silver eyes reflecting the city lights. "What else would you call it when someone crosses a desert with a wounded leg to save your life? What else explains why I feel more myself with you than I ever have within these palace walls?" She placed a hand on her abdomen. "This child was not conceived in love. We both know that. But it will be born into love, and that makes all the difference." Jace gently pulled her into his arms, careful of her condition. When did the proud princess who refused to wear a protective suit become so wise? "Perhaps when she realized that pride is a poor substitute for genuine connection," Sarah replied, resting her head against his chest. "Or perhaps when a stubborn human commander showed her that true strength lies in vulnerability, not isolation." Their moment of quiet intimacy was interrupted by a sudden gasp from Sarah, her body tensing against him. "What is it?" Jace asked in alarm. "The baby," she managed through clenched teeth. I think it's coming." The medical team had been on standby for just such a possibility. Within minutes, Sarah was transferred to the palace's medical facility, a blend of hospital efficiency and royal luxury. Jace remained at her side, despite the protests of certain traditionalists who insisted that Tilani fathers were not present for births. "He stays," Sarah had commanded through waves of pain, her tone brooking no argument. The birth itself was mercifully quick compared to the lengthy Tilani norm, though still agonizing for Sarah. Jace held her hand throughout, offering what comfort he could as she brought their child into the world. "A daughter," announced the chief physician, wrapping the newborn in a soft blanket. Healthy and strong, when the tiny bundle was placed in Sarah's arms, both parents gazed in wonder at their child. Her skin was a paler blue than a full Tilani, with a faint pink undertone that gave her a lavender appearance. Her eyes, when they briefly opened, were a striking silver like her mother's, but with a ring of Jace's brown around the pupils. A dusting of dark hair covered her small head. "She's perfect," Jace whispered, gently touching her tiny hand. Her impossibly small fingers instinctively curled around his, and he felt an overwhelming surge of protectiveness, unlike anything he had experienced before. "What shall we name her?" Sarah asked, her voice weary but filled with joy. Jace considered for a moment. "In Tileni tradition, who typically names the child?" "The mother chooses the first name, the father the second," Sarah explained. "Though in royal births, there are usually diplomatic considerations as well." "Not this time," Jace said firmly. "This name should be chosen out of love, not politics." Sarah smiled, studying their daughter's delicate features. "Lyra," she decided. "It means harmony between different melodies in the ancient Tileni tongue." "Perfect," Jace agreed. "And for her second name, Alara. It was my grandmother's name, a woman of remarkable courage and compassion." "Lyra Alara Kane Wilder," Sarah pronounced softly. "A name bridging two worlds, just as she does." The news of the princess's premature birth, occurring before the planned wedding ceremony, sent the palace into a frenzy of activity. The emperor himself came to view his granddaughter within hours, his typically stern expression softening as he beheld the child. "She has the royal eyes," he noted with obvious approval. "And something else. A quality I cannot quite name." He looked up at Jace. "Perhaps that is your contribution, Commander Wilder." "Just Jace now," he reminded the Emperor. "I'm no longer with the Alliance military." "Indeed." The Emperor straightened, resuming his formal demeanor. "The wedding must proceed immediately. I've already instructed the ceremonial planners to expedite the arrangements. The ceremony will take place tomorrow at midday." "Tomorrow?" Sarah protested weakly from her bed. "Father, I've just given birth." "Which is precisely why we cannot delay," the Emperor insisted. "The child was born before the marriage. While the trial of worth establishes legitimacy, there will still be those who question her status. We must formalize your union immediately to silence any such concerns." Despite Sarah's condition, there was no arguing with imperial decree. The wedding was hastily rearranged, with concessions made for the bride's limited mobility. Instead of the grand procession through the capital that had been planned, a more intimate ceremony would take place within the palace, with Sarah seated throughout. The Alliance delegation, caught off guard by the sudden change in plans, barely concealed their suspicion that the accelerated timeline was some sort of Tileni political maneuver. General Harker, attending as the senior Alliance representative, pulled Jace aside before the ceremony. "This is your last chance to reconsider, Wilder," he said in a low voice. "Once you go through with this, there's no going back. You'll be permanently tied to the Tileni royal family, with all the complications that entails." Jace, dressed in formal attire that blended human and Tileni design elements, merely smiled. "I made my choice when I walked across that desert, General. Everything since has only confirmed it was the right one." The ceremony itself was a beautiful amalgamation of traditions from both cultures. Sarah, though pale from her recent ordeal, was radiant in flowing robes of silver and blue, their daughter cradled in her arms throughout. The vows they exchanged were simple but profound, spoken in both standard and the formal Tileni language. "Two bloodlines, now joined as one," the Emperor proclaimed at the conclusion. "May this union herald a new era of true understanding between our peoples." The assembled Tileni nobles and human dignitaries applauded with varying degrees of enthusiasm. But Jace barely noticed. His focus was entirely on his new family, Sarah and little Lyra, who had somehow become the center of his universe in the span of a few short weeks. The days following the wedding were a whirlwind of diplomatic receptions, formal presentations of the infant princess to various political and religious leaders, and intensive medical monitoring to ensure both mother and child remained healthy. Through it all, Jace remained a steadfast presence, learning the intricacies of Teleni court protocol, while simultaneously helping Sarah navigate the challenges of new parenthood. "You surprise me," Sarah commented one evening as they sat together in their private quarters, Lyra sleeping peacefully in a bassinet beside them. "I would not have expected a former Special Forces commander to be so adept at changing diapers." Jace chuckled softly. "Military training emphasizes adaptability. Though I admit, facing down hostile forces was sometimes less intimidating than handling someone so small and fragile." Sarah reached for his hand, her expression growing serious. "Are you happy here, Jace? Truly? This life is so different from anything you've known." He considered the question carefully. "I won't pretend there aren't moments of adjustment. The politics, the protocols, the constant scrutiny, they're challenging." He squeezed her hand gently. "But when I look at you and Lyra, I know I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." "Even though it began with a crashed ship and a toxic plant?" Sarah asked, with a hint of her old wry humor. "Especially because of that," Jace replied. "We built this relationship through crisis and adversity, not convenience or political arrangement. That makes it real in a way many royal marriages probably aren't." Their conversation was interrupted by a soft chime, indicating an incoming communication. Jace activated the display to find Dr. Vargas from the Cyroth trading post, her expression serious, but not alarmed. "Commander, or should I say Consort Wilder now," she greeted him. "I hope I'm not disturbing you and the princess." "Not at all, Doctor," Jace assured her. "And just Jace is fine. What can we do for you?" "I've been analyzing the data from Princess Sarah's treatment and your daughter's unique physiology," the doctor explained. "The results are fascinating. The sulcar toxin appears to have created genetic adaptations that we've never seen before. Your daughter isn't simply half human, half Teleni. She's something entirely new." Sarah leaned forward, concern evident in her expression. "Is she in danger? Will these adaptations cause health problems?" "Quite the opposite," Dr. Vargas replied reassuringly. "The adaptations appear to be universally beneficial. Enhanced immune response, improved cellular regeneration, potential resistance to conditions that affect both parent species. She may well be healthier than either a pure human or pure Teleni child would be." Jace and Sarah exchanged surprised glances. "That's unexpected," Jace admitted. "It is," the doctor agreed. "And it raises some intriguing possibilities for medical research, if you would consider allowing us to continue studying her development. Non-invasively, of course, and with all appropriate privacy safeguards." "We'll need to discuss it," Sarah replied diplomatically. "But we appreciate the information, Doctor." After ending the communication, they sat in thoughtful silence for a moment. "Our daughter may be the beginning of something much larger than either of us anticipated," Sarah observed quietly. "The first of a new lineage," Jace agreed. "One that represents the best of both our peoples." In the months that followed, life gradually settled into a new normal. Jace adapted to his role as royal consort, finding unexpected fulfillment in his diplomatic work, bridging the gap between human and Teleni understanding. Sarah resumed her duties as princess, but with a new perspective that made her a more effective and compassionate leader than before. Little Lyra grew rapidly, displaying a blend of traits from both her parents, Sarah's quick intelligence and Jace's stubborn determination. Her unique appearance drew attention wherever they went, but increasingly, that attention was more curious than hostile. She became, without intending to, a symbol of possibility in a galaxy still healing from old wounds. 1 year after the crash that had started it all, Jace and Sarah found themselves back aboard the Nebula Star. The ship had been recovered from Cyroth and fully repaired, now serving as their personal transport for diplomatic missions. "Are you sure you want to pilot it yourself?" Sarah asked, as Jace settled into the familiar captain's chair. Lyra securely strapped into a specially designed seat beside him. "We could have a professional crew." "Some things you don't delegate," Jace replied with a smile. "Besides, I think this ship and I have unfinished business." As they lifted off from the Teleni homeworld, setting course for the first of many diplomatic visits, Jace couldn't help reflecting on the extraordinary chain of events that had led to this moment. A crashed ship, a desert crossing, a royal trial, all because a stubborn princess had refused to wear a protective suit. "What are you thinking about?" Sarah asked, noting his contemplative expression. "About how our greatest challenges can become our greatest blessings," he replied. "And about how sometimes refusing advice can lead to the most important lessons." Sarah smiled, reaching across to take his hand as the stars streaked past the view screen. "Then let's continue learning together, shall we?" With their daughter between them and the vast expanse of space ahead, they embarked on their next journey, not as commander and princess, but as partners in a shared future neither could have imagined but both now embraced wholeheartedly. The nebula star accelerated smoothly into hyperspace, carrying the unlikely family toward new horizons and whatever adventures awaited them among the stars.